Good evening, friends. We are back today with an exciting live recap of the Surviving Reelfoot competition that is going on right now. With us today, Steven, you're back.
I am.
Did you have a nice
enthused to be here. Yeah, it's been a lot of catch up. I was out for a wedding this weekend, so Sunday night and Monday was just been frantically watching every video possible and reading the recaps that people have written of all the confessionals, which shout out to them. That's a huge effort to transcribe what people are saying when I have to crank my volume up to 100 and then some to kind of make out their whispers.
Mm-hmm. I know it's impossible to hear some of the conversations because they're such consummate Survivor players that you could hear a needle easier than their whispers. And with us today as well, Jake from season 7 of Surviving Reelfoot. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's been super fun to watch Reelfoot the last few days. Give me something to do, change up my life.
I know, it's so fun actually being back to these recaps and live feeds. I live for the summers. I'm a teacher, so I get the whole summer off, and I have a brand new 10-week-old puppy. So I have every excuse to sit around and sleep with my puppy, but actually watch Surviving Reelfoot the whole time. It's been a blast. Now, Steven, did you say that season 7 was the best season?
Jake and I just might be biased by that, but I'm a fan of it.
So, Kyle Reynolds posted in the chat his opinion. And if you don't know Kyle, he is a production member volunteer for this event and also a former player. And he said that he thinks this might be the best season of Surviving Reelfoot.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, there's still a lot of game left. And I feel like people's decisions in the season always tend to be shaped by how the end game goes. So, I don't know about you, Jake, but I remember just being in awe of just the insanity that happened from, I'll accept my vote out onwards.
Yeah, I feel I remember sitting at those tribal councils. I feel like every single one that happened at the merge got crazy and crazier. So we'll see if this season can bring that up, then maybe we can hand over that it's the best one. We want to see it. There's already a 7-3-1, so I feel like they have a lot to show us still, but we'll see if they can be as crazy as we were. Maybe we can say that it was a better season. We'll see.
That's true. If we're gonna judge it by levels of craziness in the voting, some of these votes, while we didn't know always what was happening, they've been kind of unanimous. A lot of the votes have been kind of majority based. Today, what we're going to cover is day 4 mostly. If you saw our last recap, we recapped day 1, day 2, and almost all of day 3. We missed one vote out that happened later on that night, which we'll touch on. And I just have to say that all of you that watch the Rob Has a Podcast, like me, I watch all of the live feed updates for Big Brother. I always watch Taryn. I don't actually watch the show. I watch Taryn. He's my Big Brother update. And I'm so overwhelmed with how much we have to cover that I almost wish we had one day of Big Brother, no challenges. I can just watch the players and just talk about them just talking, because it is insane. There is so much game going on with these contestants. And this last round of Merge, Steven, I don't know if you got to see all this. It was crazy. Jake, did you watch it?
Oh yeah, I was trying to watch. I felt like all of a sudden different cams were popping up, and all of a sudden they were at a different group, and it seemed like everybody was talking to everybody, with the exception of Lydia, who just stayed in the hammock the whole time, which we all stand and loved. But everybody else, I think every person had a conversation with everybody else in different groups, and so it was a crazy day. I don't even know where to start.
Shout out to Reelfoot production, because I don't remember having so many live streams in season 8, and I don't remember there being as many for our season as well. So it's been kind of amazing how many people they have when they go around there filming and posting. And I really feel like we've gotten a really healthy snapshot of this season, which is kind of amazing.
Agreed.
Absolutely. And also, Lydia, totally standing you as the queen in Frank's hammock. Let's remember that's Frank's hammock.
Did you hear the comment? Someone came in and it's like, who made that? Frank was like, oh, it's the only good thing he did, or something. And I was like, oh.
No. I thought he came in with a very stylish wardrobe as well.
Yeah.
He came in playing hard, maybe a little bit too hard. But on top of that, did you notice Ronnie, this whole last round? Ronnie was the only person as well to not move. He laid under that tree the entire time. And I think this is the penultimate version of the strategy, laying low.
You couldn't get lower. That's it.
He was hanging out with the roots of the tree, and he was letting people come to him. So let's get right into it. So if you have missed any of this, clearly we're going to spoil everything up until this moment where we're at. And Reelfoot is going to go live with a challenge. I think it's at number 11 coming up very soon. And we are at, in fact, the final 11. So it's a nice little kismet right there. But on day 3, at the end of the day, we had a loss for Jerica. And that was probably one of the most maybe intense votes kind of coming into the game so far. But besides the Nikki vote was very split. But that was a crazy moment. Jake, do you have any comments about Jerica's vote off?
Yeah, it's kind of shocking. I think, unfortunately, the biggest issue is that Frank felt that Todd was his closest ally. Little did you know that Todd wanted that to all fall apart. But I actually give major accolades to Jerica. She found herself on the outs like immediately day one for really who knows what reason. And for her to make it through all of those rounds, and even in the vote that she went out to split it 4-4, even though it didn't work out for her, like it's pretty amazing for somebody who has been on the outs from the start to make it to that length. So I give her major props. I was partial because I know Jerica and she's amazing, but it was amazing to see that she was able to convince that split vote to even happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I was totally rooting for Jerica. A little known fact is I discovered Jerica. I absolutely, so Jerica was a student at my high school.
Really?
I know this is going to sound weird, folks. She never took my classes, but she was somebody who volunteered backstage for all of the productions that we would do. And so like post high school, sometimes you stay in touch with people, sometimes you don't. And I posted one day, there's this Survivor event happening.
You recruited her.
And she completely hit me up and I was like, no, you're my former student. You would want to play this. She hadn't even watched Survivor. And she's like, no, I want to do this. I want to do it for myself. Like I want to meet new people, go on an adventure. And I'm like, that's pretty much why people play these. Okay, let's try it out. And now she's gone on to play more games than almost like Stacy.
No. I don't think anyone's going to top Stacy anytime soon.
But you had a lot of fans, Jerica. We were very sad on the revote when it came out 4-1. So the original vote was 4-4. But what was very strategically interesting is that the prisoner of war twist, it was revealed at that point that the prisoner of war from the other tribe would not be able to vote at a revote. So in other words, there's no going to Rocks this season. There's no possible way that you can actually go to Rocks, at least pre-merge. So when that opened up, I think that actually opened up a lot of opportunity for strategy for the players as well.
Yeah, no, it felt like it kind of took up some of the teeth away from the twist, and the fact that it kind of makes ties not feasible, which was unfortunate because okay, maybe this is just me, but I was very excited to have someone else to join the Reelfoot walking out of the game with an idol club, and I was like, my gosh, is Todd going to accomplish this in the pre-merge? So I was kind of hoping I would not be alone in that measure, but fortunately for Todd, unfortunately for Jerry, that wasn't the case. But yeah, no, I think it's just a weird corner case where it's like, oh wait, they don't persist in the revotes, and I feel like that's a bit of a loss.
It's truly surprising with that vote too, with your point with the Todd thing too, is that when you look at Jerica versus Todd, in most people's eyes, the obvious idea at that point would be take out the big threat, which is Todd just in his physical stature alone. And it's surprising that some of these people who are fans of the game and looking to make moves and stuff didn't use that opportunity to take out Todd. But also really good on Todd for keeping the idol hush hush, because I think he would have went, had he told even one person that he had it, I think he would have went in that spot. And
also good on Todd for getting an interesting alliance together, right? Because like he voted against, he didn't vote with Skylar last time. Then it's just like, it's interesting kind of watching, just look at this voting chart, who is able to get the vote with him in the future and stuff like that. So he's played a more flexible game than I think it's on first glance.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at Todd, I think you associate him with some of the other players we've seen in actual survivors, and looking at what he brings to the table, I definitely thought he'd be a little bit of a different player than he is, but he's being much more dynamic and surprising than was expected.
So Kristen is bringing up a very interesting strategic point about this twist that I think could be used to an extent. I don't know, albeit successfully for any alliance, but if there was an 8-member tribe and you were already going to tie the vote 4-4, and you're the prisoner of war, you come over from the winning tribe and you don't vote with them, you vote off, you hinky on purpose, and then you leave, that is going to cause a normal revote to happen. Kristen, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't even process that.
Yeah, it would be surprising to do that. I guess you're just like, hey, I'm not gonna get my hands dirty. I'm gonna let you all hash things out yourself because I don't want to like burn 4 people on accident and have them and be on the wrong side of the rock draw eventually. I guess that's one way. It just feels like the prisoner of war is such a good opportunity to make friends that I would be, I don't know, loath to just kind of throw my vote.
Yeah, and I feel like you're going to really piss off that one person. Like if I just throw my vote to you, Jake, and I'm like, but Jake, it doesn't matter. I don't know.
It always matters. It always matters.
So this brought up a lot of strategic thinking, and I'm sure that evening there was a lot of talk and thought about that. At least if we were out there, I think we would be talking about that. But the next morning, we wake up bright and early to a surviving Reelfoot swap. And this is slightly how it breaks down. Here's a picture, friends. Now, this is not the whole swap because it involves some of the vote outs prior to it. So as you're going to see, there's some people in the missing in action section that are eliminated that are still in the game. These are the 3 that lost during this component of the game. So we have Skylar first, leaving in a 5-3 vote, losing from the new Rutherford tribe, the purple tribe. Then we have Frank going out in a kind of crazy 7-1-1, little crazy vote. Frank was eliminated, and he, was from Carleton at that time. So he was from the red tribe. Then we had 2 more losses for Rutherford after that. We lost Kenny, and who's
Justin.
Still in color is Justin up there. And that's kind of an interesting vote out. But let's start with the Skylar vote out, who was kind of Jerica's BFF in the game. It was kind of sad to see him go out back to back. What was your take on that, Jake?
I think Skylar just got ruined by a swap. I don't think there was anything she could have done. I think the only thing that she could have done in hindsight would have been to use her power to save Jerica the round before and hope for a better swap. I think that's the only thing she could have done, but just sometimes luck plays a part of Survivor, and I just don't, other than them winning immunity, there's nothing else she could have done.
And it sounded like when Todd was the prisoner of war that round, Todd comes over and Todd, I hear immediately goes and talks to Skylar, and it's like, oh, maybe they're close. And because Carlos I feel is a bit of a pariah on his original tribe at this point. So I don't know if Todd may have inadvertently put a target on Skylar, or Skylar was just seen more of a savvy game player, but swaps happen.
Yeah, and I don't think it helps either that Skylar played I think Skylar played the very loyal game that can ruin people sometimes. I know I have been ruined in games by doing this, but even in the Jerica vote, she wasn't the one to swap her vote. She wasn't afraid to go against the grain on the Carlos Nikki vote. Throughout the game, she's shown that she's not going to maybe flex to what people want, and I think that that's maybe why people picked her to go over Carlos, who Carlos I think is a little bit more of a flexible player.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think there's something to be said, Jake, about this this coulda, woulda, shoulda of Skylar's advantage. I was in the comments a huge proponent that she should have saved Jerica, and there was a lot of people on the other side that Skylar should save her advantage for herself. I'm almost, wait, she had the power, which advantage? It was the cancel.
A cancel a vote, I believe.
Yeah, so essentially by canceling a vote, she would have broke a tie and won the tie. I think it's still questionable maybe if they knew it was for sure if it was a tie, how deadlocked it was. But I think that's a really good discussion. I mean, Jake, if you're in that position, do you think we're what? 4 rounds into the immunity challenges. Right. We've had 4 reward challenges. you're kind of putting your hand out there, right? You're like saying, this is going to be my number one or somebody that's in my alliance because I'm saving them. Would you do that, Jake?
Would I use the cancel a vote?
Yeah.
Honestly, I want to say I would use it, but I don't think I would. I think every single person in the game at that point was expecting a swap next, and Skylar would have been better served. Like if Skylar was on the other tribe, with that breakdown, or if there was like one extra purple or whatever, a cancel a vote could have split the vote right there. So I think she was smart to save it. It's unfortunate because we all know now that the timing of that was the most perfect time to play it. But sometimes in the game, you have to be selfish. And with a swap looming, you're better going into that swap with as much help as you can have. So I don't blame her at all. I just wish that she would have used it. But that's just because I'm a Jerica stan. So
yeah, I think the block of votes, the steal of votes, the extra votes, those are overpowered in swap situations. Having been the receiving end of an extra vote, breaking a tie in a swap, it's what can you do? You're completely at the mercy of these advantages, and I think they're much less powerful come merge because it's so much harder to know how things are going and when to play them correctly. So yeah, hindsight 2020, wish you played it. It would have been good using there rather than walking out with it. But those advantages, it's kind of like if you get them pre-swap, they could be your ticket to success.
But maybe that's a good point. Maybe this is like a little message and a note for everybody is when the timing is right, you play it, whether you think you need it or not later, because that opportunity might come up later. Yeah. So
because then we see, doesn't someone use an extra vote in one of these later rounds? Yeah, no, we see Amanda use her extra vote during the Frank vote out.
Right.
Yes, and a lot of players, I think the same contingent of people that are never on the same side as me, because I always have unpopular opinions, said that Amanda had wasted her votes, whereas I think she did it just right, like almost maybe too perfectly.
Yeah, I'd say I think they obviously, again, in hindsight, it looks like she wasted it, but at the time you have to think Ronnie, Taylor, and Amanda thought that they were on the outs. They literally were telling them, we're not going to tell you anything. Todd quite literally told Taylor, we're just going to stick around camp. And so by them thinking they have this extra vote, like I say, it makes sense to play because you don't exactly know what's going to happen. And in the history of the game so far, the person that's been like the prisoner of war hasn't always been given all the correct information, and you never know where their vote is going to go, which I think actually did go weird, right? I'm pretty sure that Carlos didn't vote for Frank or for Ronnie.
Carlos voted for Chris. Frank voted for Ronnie. Everyone else just put all their votes on Frank. And I'm still not quite sure how everyone got on the same page for that. But
Taylor said in a confessional at one point when they were walking somewhere, something, Todd looked her in the eye and said, just trust me, don't worry about it, type of thing. And so that's why they went to, and there was also something about somebody wasn't willing to vote for Frank, which I think was Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos was saying, I will write any of my original tribe name down, just not Frank, anyone but Frank. And it kind of surprised me that you didn't see the original Carlton players say like, okay, we'll vote, like pick one of the other three, we'll write their name down, join us, we'll vote with you. I'm surprised they didn't take that offer up and that we end up seeing a conglomerate Frank vote.
There must have been at some point that we didn't catch. Todd, because I don't think Sherry or Chris would have said anything, but Todd must have said something to somebody somewhere along the lines to be like, Frank is not my number one, despite Frank like wanting to be with Todd to the end. So I think that's probably what set the three of them on that path with, this is our best bet to survive this.
And honestly, with like a disgruntled Carlos and an extra vote in Amanda's pocket, this was kind of the best situation for Todd, Sherry, and Chris of just like, yeah, well, let's just tribute one of our own. And then we keep winning. Yeah,
Sherry's been wanting to appease as many people as possible and not get blood on her hands. I mean, that's clear why she's snuck out of the last tribal, was like, oh, I don't want to be a part of this BS
I think
right
actually
now.
She was a target. I think her name had been thrown around as like a primary target is what I was hearing from the confessionals. I think it was actually a good call for the bounce.
Oh, wow. I did not hear her name brought up once. So that's
okay.
Super interesting to me.
Trying to catch some of those like post confessionals, and it sounds like I think she, at least as she thought like, hey, I think I'm a prime target. And I think people then bounced onto Carlos as the secondary.
Yeah, I know we'll get to that point, but I think I'm more with Kirk. I think it was a slight more paranoia because everyone's name, I think, was said at one point, but it's the first round of the merge. You do whatever you got to make it one more day. So
I'm convinced Sherry knew more information too than what we were given privilege to see, because I think she said before she left, I know we'll get into it, but she said, my vote's not going to matter. And I thought that was really weird. You know, all of us are Americans in this cast, right? And we're always like, our vote matters. But your vote so matters.
In this cast.
Okay, so I want to take us back for a second. Oh, one update. The Challenge 11 is going on. So those of you that might be viewing us right now, come back later and watch us. Go watch that live. Come back and see.
Or have two screens open.
Or have your phone open like we do, and watch it alongside. So regarding the Jericho thing, I still want to talk about Skylar's power regarding Jericho's vote out. I keep thinking about heroes versus villains, and I think about Poverty revealing 2 idols. And not only does she reveal one alliance member, she ballsy shows she's got another, and people already know she's working with Russell. She literally shows her hand to the entire game, and it's effective. But I think it is the timing in it, Jake. Like you're saying, like they knew swap was happening. A vote out power or a cancel vote is overpowered there. So that temptation to be selfish must have been more than had it been right now where we're merged and it's an individual game. Yeah, sure, I'll play my power to save you. But I still wonder, again, that idea is, should you wait? That question you said, Jake, because in Survivor, as we all know, we've all been voted out too early. And should you always use your advantage? I don't know. I think for a vote out or a cancel vote power, the vote has got to be split, right, for it to even matter. And that doesn't always happen. I mean, if we look down the line of these votes, most of the votes are not split. So most of the time, this power would be completely useless. I still think she should have used it, even though it might not have helped her game.
I think it kind of goes to what I was saying a second ago. Maybe this is like a little learning moment, is when the timing is right to it, because I think another element to this game, even speaking from experience, is that you just need to make it one day farther, and whatever is the best moment at the time. I think I'm always a proponent of do whatever gets you to that next round and then figure it out from there, whether that's a challenge win or whether that is getting somebody there that's going to help you a second later. Again, I get why she would hold on to it with a potential swap looming, but I think that just speaks that do what you need to do to put yourself in the best position, and whatever tomorrow brings.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about Amanda's power. So the Frank vote out, Amanda uses her double vote. It's a clear majority, but she uses it anyways. Well, I don't know if she knew it was a clear majority. What did you guys take on this move by Amanda?
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was smart. I think, again, in hindsight, it looks like it was clear and it was a dumb choice. But at the time, I think that her, Ronnie, and Taylor needed that to be secure. When you have people who are not giving you information, they didn't know about the extra vote. And when you look at this, if, the 3 of them had voted differently, like they could have still done something with that extra vote. They would have forced a 4-4-1, which would have been Kristen's point earlier, that they would have went to a deadlock if they were lying to them, if they were sticking along tribal lines.
Yeah, it just, I guess overall this vote just surprised me that it wasn't more of a coming together, let's all work together, let's be a 6 strong. Like, it didn't really feel that way. And it was just like, I feel like nor was an opportunity to scoop Carlos up. It was such a weird lost opportunity.
It was a weird way to play that, because you're right. That's, Todd could have easily went to them and said, like, hey, we want to work with you guys. Like, we know merge is coming up or whatever, and this is a good group, and clue them in on it rather than treat them like, we're not going to talk to you right now. I suppose at the same time, they had to keep Frank out of the loop and not knowing what was going on. But Todd knew that Frank didn't have anything. And also, just to kind of speak on this too, I actually think it was a pretty horrible move for Todd, Sherry, and Chris to make, because I think Frank was loyal to them to the end. I think Frank loved having Todd as a little bit of a shield. I think he thought that he could throw Sherry and Chris under the bus a little bit easier. And I don't think that Frank would have turned on Todd anytime soon. So I think it was, again, people wanting to make a move, even if it wasn't quite the right time for it.
And if you're Todd, I think literally you just want every target you can in front of you because everyone's going to be gunning for him at a certain point.
Mhm.
An idol can only save you so long.
This is so true. Do you guys play Magic the Gathering, or have you ever? Okay. So whatever, I just recently got back into this game because they made an online platform to play, and it's
Arena.
super
Awesome.
easy to play. It's fun. But I see new players. I just got somebody into Magic, and I see them with their hand of cards, and they just want to play the card because they can play the card. And I think it's what we're talking about is timing is so important in Survivor in everything you do, whether it's an advantage, the vote, the conversation. It's like sometimes you do have to keep them close to you. Sometimes you do have to play them. And I think this is like the coulda, woulda, shouldas that we talk about so much. I think Amanda's move, it's interesting to look at it in two ways, right? There's the resume builder aspect, and then there's the aspect of, does it raise your threat level, your target up? So let's talk about that a little bit. What do you two think this move did for her resume versus her threat level in the game?
I don't think it's going to have an impact on either very much.
I think it more so, I wouldn't say resume or threat, but I think what it did was it did solidified alliance members, because she just showed Taylor and Ronnie that she was willing to play something on them. She didn't expect votes coming for her. It sounded like they thought it was going to be going for Taylor or Ronnie. But she was willing to say, like, hey, I'm bleeding, OG Carlton strong. I'm going to stick with you guys. And I think by that, she kind of gained herself, I guess, some social capital would be the best way to say it.
I think it's the tightest, safest trio we have in the game at this point.
For sure.
Because of this.
Which trio?
The Taylor, Ronnie, and Amanda.
Yeah.
I think they have the most capital going into this game, where if you kind of look at, they have maybe a potential swing with their original Rutherford, or they can always hang out with their original Carlton. They have those connections that they can swing if they do things properly.
Wow, I'm literally just like fascinated at this point. That's I have not considered that once, and I can see the connections when that has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. I my take is that it was a great move because it didn't do anything to either of those things. It didn't raise up a resume. It's so funny because players are always like, I need to work my resume out, where I think sometimes those two things are correlated in Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your resume goes up, your threat level goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she smartly played it, like you said, Jake, for the social capital gain. And it makes me think, again, are advantages in Survivor better used to help other people? So many orgers always, at least when I play orgs, it seems very selfish. It's always like me. But it seems like in these games, when people assist others, they seem to go further in the game, and the target isn't on them. Maybe it's because they're not seen as somebody who's going to be selfish with the power and always use it. They'll consider playing it on you. Mm-hmm. So I would put it out there that maybe you should try to find opportunities to use advantages on other players when possible.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the one caveat to that is that you have to make sure that the people that you're playing him on play games with a little bit more morals and have a little bit more emotions behind how they play, because there are players in this game right now that we're watching that they'd say, oh, thanks for playing it on me, but you still got to go type of thing. So I think Amanda played it with the right people, even though Taylor is a very, very savvy player. Someone like Ronnie, I think that gains a little bit more currently. And I also don't think Taylor will backstab Amanda unless she has to. But there are certain players that would, I think, pat you on the back, say thanks, and then vote you out the next round.
So I'm curious, Jake, who do you like? Can we name some names?
Yeah,
I have some too that I think.
Who I think is cutthroat, or like who that they wouldn't buy into that as much.
I think Shane could do that.
100%. Shane is smiling in every single confessional. I think that. Yeah, I would 100% say Shane. I think Shane had some of the most crocodile tears at Tribal Councils 7 and 8. He's smiling the whole time. I think that he is for sure one. And I think Todd is another one because, look, Frank showed nothing but loyalty and still voted him out. So they're the two that kind of stand out to me in that aspect. But, yeah, that's who I would say.
So I have a question for both of you. You have been selected as prisoner 4. You go to the surplus store. You have, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 Reelfoot dollars, whatever they're called. do you pass on the advantage, or do you like buy some food and buy the advantage and try to figure out, or just pocket the money and go home? Like, what would you choose?
I'm such a team player. I know how I play these games. I would be buying for the tribe. Like, I would be so tempted to do the powers and stuff, but it's like I look back on the history of how I've played games before, and it's like I have a blabbermouth. I tell everybody exactly what's going on. I lay out all my cards. So, like, I think that I personally would be buying for the tribe just to like show. But the problem with that also, the flip side of that is you could buy for the tribe, and the way this is set up, bring all this back and say, oh, this is what I got. And because we're all savvy players, they're going to say, well, they must have got something else, or there must have been something else attached to this. So by that logic, you're probably better to also.
Well, let me phrase this. Your tribe has just gone through a tribe swap, and your tribe overall is down the numbers. You've been selected as prisoner of war, and you're going to the store. Do you buy the advantage?
Oh, well, then yes.
Okay. So why did Todd not buy the advantage when he went?
Oh, yeah, that's right, Steven.
Todd only bought food. And I thought that was very interesting because maybe he was worried about like his target, or just like, we're in such a precarious situation in my new tribe, but he didn't buy the advantage. And I thought that was very curious.
Todd wasn't at the bottom. Todd, there was four. He had 4 OG purple players on his tribe.
But maybe he's just worried that the numbers are so slim in the 4-3. I don't know. I am not Todd, but it just struck me. It was curious. Like he didn't choose the buy one. I don't think Taylor did either, to my knowledge.
So the twist to that, right, is like you can buy the advantage and choose not to use it. Like you can choose to, like, I think somebody has thrown an idol into the ocean before, right? Boss Rob threw a clue into the volcano.
Sure.
Like you can. That's a move as well, to just not allow anybody to use this advantage. So I think, as strategic as Todd has been throughout the game, I think that was a huge missed opportunity for him, Steven, to take more control. And clearly he's a player that likes control, as we saw, as we'll get to when we get to the final vote out that we're going to talk about. That's really interesting. I think regarding me, had I been in that situation, Steven, knowing me, I would have bought it hands down. I wouldn't have cared about the food. I would have tried to sneak the food from somebody else, or borrow food from people later on. I think I would have just went straight for the advantage regardless, and then tried to make a choice whether it was useful for others or for just for me.
Yeah, because I kind of actually agree with what more Jake says. If this was like truly the start of the game, that advantage might be poisonous, right? Because everyone's just looking for something, but where Todd goes, no, I'm going for the advantage.
Yeah, but also the flip side of that is wasn't it like Carlos that went at some point, or they thought Carlos had something and he never did, or I feel like that happened somewhere along the way.
So this was an interesting moment in the game. Another highlight is at this moment, Carlos mutinies to the other tribe.
The 1 in 6.
Well, yeah. So he just, peace out. I'm going to join the big tribe. And it was a very smart decision in the sense that that tribe ended up winning the next 2 immunity challenges, keeping Carlos safe. So the first challenge here, we lose Kenny at a 5-1 vote. And I will admit, this one I did not watch live. I wasn't there seeing all of the confessionals, so I didn't grasp everything going on. And I was actually really surprised because I had on my notes, I had Kenny going far because I thought he was playing one of the best under the radar games out of everybody in the cast, and I'm clearly wrong. So what did I miss, folks?
So this was so what happened here is they show up to the challenge, and then Carlos is like, hey, I'm mutinying. So he jumps to their tribe, right? And so whatever. So they do the challenge. Rutherford 2.0 loses, and then they go straight to tribal council. So there's no strategy. And I don't know if Kenny was always the boot, or that was simply oh shoot, we need to just do something, and this is the easiest way to go. And maybe had they had an hour or two, something would have developed. I don't know. But Kenny votes Mike. Everyone else votes Kenny.
Yeah, well, and part of that too is I think it was unfortunate because who Kenny was on a tribe within his tribe, those others were closer. In particular, I believe it was Sarah, Shane, and Justin that were super close, with Mike kind of connected to a few of the people there. So I think Kenny was I think they would have obviously worked together if they all made the merge, but at that point, that was their decision because Mike was a little bit more connected to that block of 3 of Shane, Sarah, and Justin, who are making the decisions. You also missed a lot of tiers at that tribal council, which had a lot of mixed reactions. I was a little bit harsher on it, and other people were more empathetic
Not
towards
Survivor
it.
without tears. Let's be honest.
No, I will say, I think Kristen made this point in the chat and a few others who have played, and it's like you are hungry and you're tired and you don't get much sleep, and the game truly is exhausting, and everybody deals with emotion differently. Like, I know for me, it was just kind of like all of a sudden I'm just kind of blank out and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, what is even happening right now? And some people cry, other people laugh when they're in uncomfortable situations, like Skylar did a few rounds ago. But I think somebody maybe had some genuine tears, and then other people kind of got on the bandwagon to get a little bit of empathy. I think there were some crocodile tears. And the reason why I'm not very empathetic towards it is because not a single tear was shed when they voted out Skylar. Had Carlos been there, no tears would have been shed either. But when you look back at the game thus far, this is the first time that group of 5 really had to eat one of their own, because Lydia was a solid vote and Skylar was a no-brainer for them as well. So this was the first time in 4 days now that they actually had to play. And so I just don't feel as bad about it. Like, that probably makes me sound harsh, but this is Survivor and this is what you sign up for. And I get that you're all close. Like, I'm super close to a lot of people I played with as well, but maybe I just don't show emotions as much as I should. I don't know, but
well, like different seasons develop different ethos. I know, like my Sour BC season, the merge, to my knowledge, because I was not in it, had a lot of tears involved, and so I think it was maybe the sudden tribal council and just the shock, like, oh shoot, what are we doing? And like you even over just 4 days, you feel like you've developed like really deep friendships.
Totally. Yeah, that's interesting too, though, Stephen, about like the kind of the feeling of it, because when you look at different seasons, even just like through Reelfoot or the main show and other live games, it feels like every season, regardless of what the theme is, takes on its own feel. Like, I look back to ours and it's like when we played in season 7, I don't remember tears at a single tribal council throughout the whole game.
Not tribal council.
Other tears, because the game is draining and emotional. Like, I mean, for every reason, I think like everyone probably had one point, but at tribal council, in terms of voting it off, I think I don't know what that says about our cast, but then this season it does feel like the connections are a little bit more intertwined into the game, maybe, or like the relationships are playing more of a factor than the strategic element. I'm not really sure what that says, but I think that's an interesting point about different seasons having different kind of feels to them.
That's interesting. And we are, coming into this post-COVID. So for some people, this might be your first big event with a group of people. I know when I went to play Michigan Mole and I was in a house without a mask on, for the first few hours, I was just super uncomfortable. And I was just like, how close can I get to you? How close can I talk? A few drinks into the hot tub, we were fine. But I mean, that's a very interesting thing. There's a different feel depending on the season. Like, you can look at season 1, season 2, season 3 of Reelfoot, and they're very different feels than what we have today. This is very Survivor-y to me. Like, I feel like I'm watching the show. Like, I dig it so much. So Kenny gets booted. And one other interesting thing is that this prisoner of war twist has been on this whole time. And these players have been getting these massive powers that have been easily available. It's not like they're very hidden at the surplus store. It's like a piece of paper and Pete's like, you can look at it. It's like, okay, let me
like,
read
they
it.
even point out, like, yeah, that thing is free. You should take it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it at least cost money. So let's go through this, because I want to. So Lydia got a hidden immunity idol clue. Mike got a tarp and food. I'm still not sure about that. Skylar got a vote cancel. Amanda got the extra vote. Todd got food. Carlos got a mutiny,
which is probably the most effective power we've seen today. It bottom the merge, essentially.
Which, pause on that for a second, because I actually love that as a power in the game rather than everyone can do it. Like, that's a really interesting power, and there's a lot of dynamics to it, and I think Reelfoot and other orgs should take that, because that's a really interesting power, I think.
Absolutely. The mutiny, the safety without power version of mutiny is definitely a keeper in Survivor. Thought about with this, about telling people in advance you're going to use it. There's a lot I think we could talk about that particular power.
Yeah. Sherry was like kind of like saying this advantage sucks. I'm like, I don't know. That's still like get out of tribal council free card.
Honestly.
I mean, yeah, you leave your alliance up the stream, but shoot, sometimes who cares?
So then Taylor, the next round, is the prisoner of war, and we're also going to see possibly the most effective prisoner of war voting in this round.
Yeah.
But Taylor gets money. Taylor doesn't even get food.
But
she just gets more cash.
Considering we know in the merge, anyone can go to the surplus store. Not the worst.
Smart, honestly.
So I think when we think about this prisoner of war choice, I think the first thing, like, okay, they can make a tie vote happen. Well, we know that's not the case. But the other thing we were talking about, like, can you give advantages, right? Like, in the prisoner of war leaves before idols are played, but what if you give your idol away? And we finally get to see that happen here, which was really exciting and interesting.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by it. Again, it kind of goes to that Taylor-Mike connection that we have since found out from a previous game. And I think people are itching to make a move. Taylor was trying to position herself for the merge, knowing that Mike is somebody that she'd be able to work with. Again, to Kirk's point about playing it on somebody else and saving somebody. But when you know the merge is that close, it really surprises me that a player like Taylor wouldn't hold on to that for herself when a merge is looming.
So, question to both of you. Do you disclose if let's say you show up to I don't know season 10 of Reelfoot and it's you're returning and everyone else is a new player theoretically, do you and you see, hey, I know this person on my tribe, or hey, I know that person on my other tribe, we play together, do you disclose that?
Depends on who else is playing.
Nowadays, when you have Edge of Extinction is so popular in live reality games, it's just functional. It's called different things, but it's in a ton of different series. I would say if you're aware that Edge of Extinction exists, probably you should tell at the start, because they're going to compare notes. Even if the person who's your ally, Jake, let's say we played a game and I'm on Edge of Extinction, I'm probably going to tell everybody there, oh yeah, I knew Jake.
Yeah, like for sure.
And then it will hurt your game, but not mine. Right?
And Taylor said that in a confessional too. It's like the truth always comes out. It's surprising when it doesn't. And it's kind of a weird thing to navigate. And not only if you've played together, but just your kind of game list in general. Like, I can speak for my season that by me talking about Mayhem, who Steven knew me and knew that I beat Jericho, who was a threatening player, and I got as far as I did, that was a big reason I had a target on my back. And then at the same time, again, speaking to our season, there were 6 players in the game who all knew each other quite well, and I had no idea about it until I was out of the game, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's huge that they were all able to keep that secret. So I kind of err on the side of what Taylor says about the truth normally does come out, and you're ready to it's better to be upfront about it, because if you're upfront, you can play the whole, yeah, we played together, we know each other, but he backstabbed me, or he did this to me, or she did that, or, you know, I beat her at the end, and just give a little bit of a seed that says, like, yeah, we played together, but that doesn't mean we're working together. You nip it in the butt from the start, and you don't let the speculation start behind your back. And I think that's the best
narrative.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And FYI, we just got a post that Chris has just won individual immunity, the second individual immunity of
and
the season.
He might really need it.
Yeah, you don't know. Maybe he got some votes last round or the round before. So Taylor goes to the tribal councils. Taylor has had an idol. She was the one who found the idol under the arch, not an arc, Taylor. I know you kept calling it an arc, Taylor. It is an arch that you were looking at. She found it at the very obvious arch that nobody else could find in the woods, which was hilarious. And I would say this, Jake. I think she did this more effectively than the showy move. The showy move in Survivor is to go, it's poverty, right? I'm playing my idol on Sandra. I'm playing my idol on Jerry.
She's not allowed to do that.
And I think in 2021, you do it before you get to tribal. You have to hide these things. And I was very, very stoked when Mike played the idol effectively.
It was exciting to watch, that's for sure. Like, all votes nullified is a pretty exciting thing for the viewers. I would not have wanted to be Justin or Shane or Sarah in that situation, but it was fun to watch.
But, like, I think overall this tribal council is just utter disaster, because, like, I mean, first of all, like, we know that Justin comes back in, but let's say Justin doesn't even come back in, right? Like Taylor could have given Mike the idol and say, I need you to posture with this. Like, this is my idol. I don't want, like, only play if you absolutely do. I need you to posture and say, look, I have an idol. I'm playing it tonight. I'm not going anywhere. Please work with me. I want to keep working together. And so that way you have these issues where you break these relationships ahead of time. You can at least force people to work with you, or if they don't, it's still some sort of like 2-1-1 or something like that. And like I don't know.
That's really interesting, Stephen, to try to break it down like a Susan Camosa, who won my season, did a 2-1-1 at Final Four, and it's like, what? How did you do that? They could have broke it down into like a 2. Oh gosh, it's tricky because Justin, Sarah, and Shane all voted Mike. One of my questions, and was Justin the right choice here? In other words, why did they choose to save Sarah and Shane? My question really comes down to is I saw Justin and Mike doing most of the talking during these tribals and these confessionals. So I was really surprised when that was who they settled on as the person to vote out.
I think it came down between Shane and Justin, because I think it was pretty obvious that they had become a pair, and that's what Taylor had talked about, Mike had talked about, and I would imagine Taylor had said something about it can't be Sarah type of thing, because Taylor wants to keep the girls in and is hoping that there's a possibility down the line for that to happen, which good on them, because there's much fewer girls in the game right now. But I think it ultimately was down to, I think Shane and Justin at this point and thus far are very comparable in the way they're playing the game. And when you look at it, at least I don't know as much about Shane, but I recognize Justin from Survival Challenge, and he did quite well. If I remember correctly, he made it he made it to the merge in a 20-player game or something like that. So I think he is a more obvious threat, but I think Shane is probably actually the bigger threat and should have been who should have went. I just don't think that Shane is playing as loudly as Justin, even if it's both quiet.
I was talking to Kristen earlier how I feel this is a cast of not everybody, but many players utilizing the under the radar lay low strategy at the start of the game, instead of like trying to really create the alliance, control it, and see how that shakes out. And that makes it really tricky, I think, for this cast where we're at right now at the merge to figure out who are the power players, because I haven't seen you do anything yet. So this could emerge at Final 7 and you trot your way to Final 3 and you enjoy a nice, healthy, 7-0-0 win. This is a Final 3, right? Didn't they tell us that or not? No?
I mean, so the jury starts at 11. They can either have a Final 3 of the jury of 8 or a Final 2 of the jury of 9. They can do either. And so that's going to be interesting, right? I mean, they're not doing the Survival Challenge 2019 where you have merge at 13 and surprise Final 2 of the jury of 11, right? They're not going to pull that out anymore.
No, that's not going to happen. So right before this morning, we had our comeback challenge. I love Reelfoot challenges. I was a little disappointed. I know I'm going to have some critique. We played cornhole for like an hour. It is the thing about it. It's very fair versus physical ability, right? Like I see that it's very fair. I was almost hoping that the challenge would change during the rounds, like versus when there's 7 people. So essentially what happened, friends, is that all of the players who had been eliminated that stayed at the missing in action camp, they were allowed to play to get back into the game, and not just 1, but 2 players came back in so they could hopefully really shake things up. The players that came back in were Justin, which is, we're going to get to that point that Stephen was just making, how that was a worthless round. And to, I think, a lot of people's surprise, Lydia.
Like, what cracks me up mostly is that like only 3 original Rutherford players were eliminated, right? It's 5 Carleton, 3 Rutherford, right? Yeah. And 2 Rutherford come back in the game. So now you're walking the merge with 7 original Rutherford, 7 original Rutherford, and like 4 Carleton or something. I'm mixing them up. Like,
it's with those 2 back, it's 7 OG Carleton and
there we go.
5 OG or no 4 OG Rutherford.
Yeah.
And so and now 3, right? Yeah, because Carlos. So there's literally only 3 original purple players, and Sherry, Todd, and Chris, right? Which speaks to that, the little trio block that's going to be hard to break throughout the game. Yeah. Yeah, so the only people that Rutherford has out of the game right now are Frank and who's the other one? Frank
Carlos,
and
yeah.
or not Rutherford, Carlton. It's Frank. Who are the only two original red people? Are Frank?
Yeah,
and
it's gonna be wow, I can't Kenny and Carlos. Oh, talk about and so Kenny and Carlos from Carlton. Rutherford's missing Aaron. Oh my gosh, I'm getting them all mixed up. Ah!
So Carlton's missing Kenny and Frank, right? Oh, Frank was on Rutherford. I was just kidding. I can't do it either. I can't do the math either.
It's so hard, but Amanda's still in the game. Lydia's in the game now. Justin, Mike, Ronnie, Sarah, Shane, and Taylor.
Only Kenny. Only Kenny's out. Oh my god.
Oh, really?
So just let's get back to this.
Oh my gosh.
Only Kenny is gone from this tribe. They are very much aware of this.
Now,
this is too easy to get to the final 8 this way. Like, why would you not take this opportunity?
So one of the things I was wondering is how fractured is this tribe, right? Lydia's a malcontent. Mike nearly got voted out by Shane, Sarah, and Justin. Justin was voted out solely by Mike, which isn't as bad, and came back in, but now it's like, I guess I'm a target.
And does Justin know that Taylor gave Mike the idol, or is it still being played that Mike just had the idol?
There was a big conversation Taylor and Mike had about this particular conversation where they said they had to keep it secret the entire time.
So did you all listen to the Justin and Mike about it was like 20 minutes of them talking with each other?
Oh, let's get right into it, because this, friends, if you want to watch anything great Survivor from the season, go to anything that says round 10, immunity 10, everything from there to 11, watch all of it. It's so good.
Yeah, so Mike and Justin, I think this eventually, and it's not the first thing that happens, go off with each other and talk. And it's a pretty emotional and difficult conversation. I don't normally feel voyeuristic when watching live feeds, but I felt voyeuristic here. I kind of felt uncomfortable being a part of this conversation. And it's kind of like, I think the issue is, I don't know when Taylor gave Mike the idol, but I think it was pretty darn close to tribal council. And so the whole morning leading up to Mike idling out Justin, Mike is panicking and desperate and begging and emotional and pulls on the heartstrings of his tribe and gets them to admit that, yes, we're voting them out. And at this point, Mike has sworn up and down he is an idol. And, well, JK, he has one now because Taylor gives it to him. He plays it. He takes out Justin. So you have Justin, who's bitter and heartbroken at this point that Mike has lied to them this entire time, because Mike and Taylor have agreed, I'm not telling anyone that I got that idol for you. I'm going to tell everyone that I hold fast and I never tell anyone I have idols. So Justin is upset and bitter about this idol play. You have to remember, well, Justin, you also writing down Mike's name, but that's Justin, you're right. Mike lied to you about this idol. That's what's wrong here, and it's this very weird conversation with Mike kind of apologizing, but also trying to explain why he voted out Justin. I don't ever feel like I got a great reason, but it was kind of hard to watch.
Oh, it was so difficult to watch. And Justin was using pathos and guilt tripping and anything he could use to make Mike feel bad. And of any players to play that on, Mike is a brilliant player because he's an emotional player and he gets emotional in all of the games. So kudos on Justin for making that happen, but it was super cringy to watch. It was hard. And when you think about the meta behind this, so Mike's apologizing, but his apology is a lie. It's not really what happened. So who lies when they apologize? It's the funniest thing to me. It's not true at all. And then Justin, let's just kind of jump into it. Justin is about to, if he has not already, I think he's already found the hidden immunity idol from the challenge. So Justin found a hidden immunity idol hidden under the table. And his conversation is so dramatically ironic because we're aware of everything happening, but these two people are not aware of any of this. And Justin is sitting there, has an idol, is keeping it secret, but is blaming Mike for having an idol and keeping it secret from him. I can't wait till Justin uses this for hope, maybe poetic justice. I love Mike, but I mean, it would be a beautiful storyline arc to see this happen.
Yeah, well, and like it's not only that, but it's also that Mike had this past relationship with Taylor and Jerica in these games. So and so it was like, oh gosh, Jen's like, well, how truthful were you with me? And Mike's like, well, like 98%. But well, then it comes out about this past relationship, and Mike's like, I guess like 88%. Justin just looks at him, but it's like no one is 100%. I mean, I was not 100% on this with Cole, and he was like my ride or die when I played, right? So it's like,
True.
I don't know.
Good choice, Steven. Cole, that's a smart player to align with.
I tried.
Yeah, no,
well, I saw
that.
Out,
but I played Metsy.
Cole, I remember Cole going around at tribal council whispering into people's ears.
Oh my
and I was like, oh, yep.
Longest tribal of my life.
Gosh, what was that phrase? Like, there's no difference between truth and lies, or some sort of like. It was. Wild.
Yeah, I just watched it the other night because I was like, "What is the episode title?" And I was like, "Oh gosh, wrong tribal."
Like Cole's one of those players you're talking about, Jake. He's not an emotional player. He's completely a survivor robot, and that's why he's so smart at it too.
Yeah.
So I love watching Cole play. He's been playing The Amazing Race or The Amazing Hunt. That's super fun. If you're a big fan of him, check that out. You'll get to see him in his true glory.
I missed getting back to this whole merge, but I missed a large part of the strategy because I was bouncing around doing work. So what were your old takes on what was going on with this merge vote?
It's honestly, I think we're going to have to hear more information from people as they come into Ponderosa if we get footage of that and as people come out of the game, because it was just like, it seemed like it was almost an hour worth of videos at camp and stuff. And it just seemed like everyone was talking to everybody and conversations were happening all over. I don't know how it's even possible with what the breakdown was that Todd and Taylor and Carlos voted together. And the fact that Taylor voted out Ronnie is surprising to me. Like, I just feel like I don't even have a good enough, I just don't even have a good enough grasp to understand what happened for this to break down. There was talk of there being a group of 7, but I feel like that group of 7 it was a different group of 7 depending on who was talking about it. And Shane wanted to implement some strategy where there was a phrase that was given at tribal council, and that's what signaled everybody. So if I say like, good luck guys, that means we're voting Steven. Or if we say like, I'm nervous, that means we're voting Kirk, which it's never going to work. Sorry, Shane. That just will never work.
Thank you.
Professional. Right after tribal, he's like, look, 10 minutes before tribal, Todd grabs us. He grabs the original Rutherford 4, as well as I think Taylor, Mike, and someone else.
Lydia.
Like maybe Amanda, or I don't remember who. He grabs Lydia. Yeah, he grabs Lydia. He grabs 3 of the original Carlton and says, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're all gonna put our votes together in Ronnie. We're gonna make this happen. He tries to like get it all together, and I think apparently Taylor just kind of like walks out during this conversation, and like apparently he never like seals the deal with Lydia and Mike and Chris, and afterwards Chris was like, well, what was that? So then Chris went to his work and went to talk to like, who are we voting for exactly? Everyone's just throwing out Carlos or whatever. He's like, great, let's make that happen. And so that's how Chris ended up on the right side numbers, because he realized that Todd's plan was Titanic and sinking quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's very funny that everybody was doubting Taylor because she had to pee. But Taylor voted Ronnie with Todd and Carlos. So like she was all in, but I have to say, like, I love Taylor's game. I watched her at Home for the Holidays. I've seen her in other things. I was shocked that was the moment your bladder had to do that, because the subtext of the body language is I don't give a fuck, and I'm not a part of this. And even when I was watching that whole thing go down, Steven, Sherry and Chris looked so uncomfortable in that conversation, and I was really surprised. I'm like, why is Sherry uncomfortable around Todd? This seems weird. I think Sherry was maybe considering using her advantage already by that point, and maybe just coming to terms with, I'm not going to tell any of you fools that I'm going to use this.
Well, also with Sherry too, it's either play it now or the next round, and play it now because if you have immunity the next round, great, right? And safety without power isn't something you want to play on somebody else because maybe you want to send somebody away to lose their vote, but like generally you're going to want to use that for yourself just to save yourself one more round.
Jake, I actually all day I've been thinking about that since this happened. I wasn't sure if players could do that. If that is, I do think that an offensive use of that power is probably more advantageous to take somebody else out of the other team.
Yeah.
Or to save somebody who's a target at the last minute. Steven, you're a target. First, if I'm gutsy enough, maybe I save you with that, and I have you go and let's see them scramble. The problem with it is if I play it on you, I might become a target. So it might be one of those things where I have to give it to you before tribal. You play it at tribal, so it looks like it's your power. Maybe I'm safe then.
I can also see that you're in a majority and you're worried about the minority who has an advantage. So you just knock them out of tribal council, say, sorry, we're going to send you home. Yeah, you're immune, but I don't want you playing your advantage. So not only does your alliance lose your vote, your alliance will also lose your extra vote, your steal vote, your block vote, or whatever it is, potentially.
It's interesting. I think as we see more of this safety without power and more orgs and stuff, it'll be interesting to see how else it's used, because I've only can think of a couple times I've seen this power being played in both the real show and here. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
I have one request from the community though. We need a better name for this. There's got to be a 1 to 2 word name for this advantage, so it's not like an utter mouthful of safety without power. And that doesn't even give you a good acronym, man. We have to come up with a better thing to call this.
Just I'm leaving. That's it. That's the name. Just I'm leaving.
Yeah, I'm leaving. Vacay.
Yeah.
We call it vacay. Yeah, it does need a better name. Safety without power. At this point, we really need to come up with something that's a cool key term, catchphrase to use for this. Post it in the comments if you see this later on. We'll see it, and we'll start getting it into the vernacular. It'll stick at some point. So Carlos goes home in a 7-3-1 vote. Oh man.
I have massive kudos to Carlos. I feel like I relate quite a lot to his game. It just feels like he could never get back on the right side. His name was always out there. It felt like he was kind of clawing for every second to get to the point that he did. And I was really hoping that the merge would turn things around for him, but it just didn't work. But I will say, if I have any complaint about Reelfoot, it is this. It is so harsh that the person who makes merge does not make the jury. It is crushing for me. It happened to my sister in the season I played as well. And I get it's the game and how they need to make it work for the numbers and everything, but it just is like you make it to that iconic moment, but then you're still not a part of the whole rest of the game, and you're the only person that gets that kind of shaft, if you will.
It is rough, Jake. Something I was thinking about too is in Carlos's position. Carlos has had a target on his back since day one. He was a target because he received a clue to the idol, and it was assumed he found it. He didn't find it. Todd found it, and he's been taking the brunt of that for the entire game, and it's never left him. He's never been able to come out of that shadow of the hidden immunity idol that he never found. And it's just kind of tragic to think that had he been voted out at any of those other previous tribals, he might be in the game right now.
Right.
Because he would have been immune at that tribal council.
Yeah.
So it's like he missed battle back by 1 round. He missed jury by 1 round. What does Carlos get? I hope I don't know, but he deserves a fucking king's welcome in that cabin up there. Like, feed him, let him take a bath, let him treat him well, because guys, those tears, that was legit. Carlos loves Survivor so much. If you know him in real life, absolutely adores. It's the type of player you want to see in this game. And it's hard to see him get the shaft. He got the shittiest position in the possible game.
Totally. You know what? Sometimes I'm going to speak to my experience for a second, because this is how I have handled it. Because unlike Carlos, I did make the jury, but only because I scratched by for one more round getting an immunity and then was out. But sometimes in Survivor, you just cannot grow. You just can't find the legs. Like, one little thing takes you out and you are clawing the whole way. Like, I look back on my game and I was supposed to be the first person voted out if I wasn't saved by a twist. And then it was somebody else that saved me the next time we went to Tribal Council. And then I was luckily swapped with my sister, and I still was voting in the minority. Like, I voted in the minority every single Tribal Council for the entire game. I just could not get footing. And if there's anything I learned from that, it's just that that's sometimes how the game works. Take any little notes you can from it and be prepared for another game in the future. Because I look back and it's just like, I just never, ever, ever had footing in the entire game, even though I thought I did. And I think Carlos had much the same situation. It's like, you get a little glimmer of hope, and then you realize during that vote you still don't have the footing you thought you maybe did.
Was Carlos even the right vote out here? Because for the most part, it was the original Carlton sticking together and determining what it is. Like, I was surprised that's where your target was, if you're going to knock out one of the minority Rutherford.
But it's that mob mentality at the merge. We saw it in our season too, Steven. It's sometimes easier at the start to knock off those people who are maybe don't have the numbers, because it's easier to vote in a block mentality. And we see this in other Survivors too. It's like, sometimes it's easy to collectively get on the same page as somebody who maybe isn't as well connected. And maybe it's not the right move, but I think we might even see it one more round of this before the actual playing starts in the merge.
Agreed, but like I would feel that way if it wasn't running down original tribe lines, right? I guess like just because how fractured it is with the leadership, right? With Mike and Justin kind of panicking and on outs. I don't know if anyone's taken that mantle. Maybe that's the reason, but it's just like, I would feel like you would want to, like, you aim for Chris or Todd if you were looking for something, or maybe you're worried about idols, so that's why Carlos is the easy answer. I don't know.
But both Chris and Todd have better alliances and better people backing them up than Carlos was almost alone in this game. You know, Carlos throughout this game hasn't had anybody that's been like fully looking out for him, which is really unfortunate. Whereas that other three from original Rutherford or whatever, Todd and Sherry and Chris, are all have each other's backs. And it's just how the game shakes out sometimes.
Unless your plan is to eliminate the original Rutherford, you've got to be looking at, like, okay, at some point we're turning on each other. Who will I have when that happens?
I think it's you'd think that would be the smart way, but the mob mentality, it happens. Like, it's so easy to collectively as a group, and then you're like, in your head, you're feeling, I'm making it one more round, which is ultimately what everybody wants to do. As soon as you hear it's not you, it's easy to say, well, as long as it's not me. And then all of a sudden you're in a situation where if you're that person that's being said, there's nothing you can do unless the winds change on their own. You can plead, you can beg as long as you want, but sometimes the winds will not shift in your favor.
Yeah.
And unless you have an advantage, there's nothing you can do on your own in Survivor. Yeah, absolutely. I think, Chris has walked away with immunity. He currently has it. They are probably strategizing as we speak. He is not going to go home. Let's do a couple of predictions here. We haven't talked about this with either of you. Let's predict maybe who might be one of the next players voted out, and who are you also rooting for? It can be multiple people, but who? Jake, let's start with you. Who do you think might be voted out next based on what's happened, and who are you rooting for?
Yeah, I really hope this isn't the case, and I certainly do not want to jinx it, but I think Taylor might be in a bit of a situation. I think one mistake Taylor made was laying out exactly how hard she's playing to the game when she was the prisoner of war in round 8 when Mike went home. She really laid it all out for like 20 minutes. She told everybody what was going on, and I think that cued her in. She just voted on the wrong side of the numbers in this last vote, even though I don't know how intentional or not that was. She just showed she won immunity on a bad knee, and I think people are starting to catch on to how savvy the player is. So I really hope it's not her, because Taylor is somebody I'm rooting for. I would say as a whole, Taylor and Amanda and Ronnie are the three that I'm gravitating towards the most right now. But I think Taylor and I think Ronnie could be in a situation as well, just because he's playing a likable game. likable player in the game.
I love it. What about you, Steven? What's your opinion on this? Who do you think might go next, and who are you rooting for?
Well, I think her name rhymes with Sherry. I think she's with Chris immune. I think Sherry's out of here. I think we should expect to see some sort of split vote on Sherry and Todd, attempting to flush a potential. Well, actually, no. Todd showed his idol. Everyone put it around his neck at last tribal council. So everyone knows Todd is an idol, which kind of ticked off Todd's alliance anyways. Like, why didn't you tell us? So everyone knows Todd's an idol. I think that's getting flushed, and I think Sherry is going to bear the weight of the sin of that idol.
Do you think so, Steven? You think that Carlton is that connected right now? Like, do you think they're going to? Just for one more?
Yeah, I think they're going to flush Todd's idol. I think Sherry's going to go up because of it. I think then at the final 10, we'll start seeing some. I think we'll see people really scramble. But I think just such a visible idol, you're just like, well, that's a common enemy right there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And to that point, maybe they'll kind of do a little reverse play and make them think it's Sherry going to try to take out Todd instead. Like, I think you're right. I think something could definitely happen in that capacity.
Absolutely. That makes more sense. I was thinking it was going to be Mike, based on kind of deception with Justin. Justin has the power with the idol. Maybe they would keep Taylor around because of her knee, and it's individual, kind of like a Tyson a la.
She just won with a hurt knee. Like, I don't think.
I know. Like she would clearly have to play up that injury even more than she already is, if she is any. But I could see them trying to actually get rid of Todd and Sherry, and the strategy of, if you don't totally get rid of the other alliance, they're going to be in the finals. They're going to find a way to sneak in there. So I could see them actually doing what you're saying, Steven. Yeah. Flush the idol. That was a terrible move to reveal it. We didn't really talk about that, but everybody should have revealed pardon my French, the fucking advantage to the 7 people in the conversation. When you're sitting with the 7 people, I have an idol. Oh my God, I have what else was in there? I have a vote block. I have you'd piece it together, kind of like what they did on
David versus Goliath.
David versus Goliath, and you take these kind of shitty advantages, you put them all together, and you're a transformer now. You can take over. You're Optimus Prime, and you can win this game.
You know what? I will say, when you look at this entire, who's left of the final 11, even including Carlos before he went, this cast I think has been so good, and every single player, I think I could make a case for why they might be the next to go, but also why I think they could win the game. When I'm looking at the 11 players, I genuinely think that every single person still has a chance to win, which I don't think is always the case when we play orgs. There are some players you see that's they have no chance, they're never going to make it, they're never going to win the game if they make it to the finals. But I'm really impressed looking at this group, because I feel like anybody can pull ahead here.
I'll say Amanda and Shane are the 2 people I think will be able to get the furthest or get
if I was putting my money on somebody right now to say this is who I'm placing my bet for the win, I'm placing it on Amanda, I think.
I think I might too. I'm a little surprised because I didn't think this 48 hours ago.
Yeah, I did either. Same.
Yeah, Amanda's in a great spot. Got rid of her power. No more worry about that. You can just play the game now, honey, and just trot your way to the finals, hopefully. This is a great cast. I think the argument that's not gonna last with these players is you're too much of a threat, because they're all threatening in their own different way at this point at merge. You can they all really do have somewhat of a story to tell in a different way for a final jury. So at this point, it's like playing to beat a good player, not trying to drag the worst player to the end, because I don't know exactly who that would be out of this particular group. I don't know who the GOAT would be, in other words.
I'd rather make a name for myself than try to identify and drag a GOAT.
All right. So this was a long one, guys. We went a little bit over an hour. I really want to see Tribal Council. So we'll see you guys in the comments. This was great. We'll come back with a couple other updates later on in the week. When does this event end, guys? Do you know?
Saturday?
I believe it's 8 days. Yeah, I
think
so.
8 days. This is an 8-day LRG, friends. This is officially 1/4 of Modern Survivor now.
Oh, it's depressing we put it that way.
Right? Or no, it's a third.
A
Isn't
little
it?
less.
What did they say? 24 days?
26.
29.
Okay, so we're right. Yeah, we're a quarter of it.
Yeah.
We're getting up there. I think at 25%, we're truly legitimate. We can no longer be called a backyard survivor. Okay,
Yeah.
we are legit. Friends, it's always fun to see you. Thanks for leaving the comments, and we'll talk to you soon.